The email came through at 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Subject line: Retention bonus distribution confidential. I was still at my desk in the systems engineering department at Crestwood Financial, where I'd worked for 8 years. 8 years of 70-hour weeks, of fixing critical infrastructure failures at 2 a.m., of training every new hire who walked through the door. My name is Nathan Pierce. I'm 34 years old, and I thought loyalty meant something in this business. I was wrong. I opened the email with my coffee getting cold beside my keyboard. The message was brief, clinical, the kind of corporate speak that sounds friendly but means nothing. Dear Nathan, we're pleased to inform you that you've been selected to receive a retention bonus of $4,500 in recognition of your continued service to Crestwood Financial. $4,500. I stared at that number for a full minute. Then I heard it, through the cubicle wall that separated my workspace from Tyler Brennan's. He was on the phone, and he wasn't even trying to keep his voice down. "Babe, you won't believe this," Tyler said, practically shouting into his phone. "They just gave me a $42,000 retention bonus. $42,000. We can finally get that down payment together for the condo." Tyler Brennan, 26 years old. He'd been at Crestwood for 18 months. I'd trained him myself, spent 3 months teaching him systems architecture that I'd taken years to master. He still called me when he couldn't figure out basic network configurations. And he'd just gotten a retention bonus that was almost 10 times what I'd received. Before we dive deeper into what happened next, if you're enjoying this story of corporate betrayal and what I did about it, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below sharing your own workplace experiences. And don't forget to like this video. It helps more people find stories like this one. Now let's get back to the moment my 8-year career started falling apart. I sat there, that email still glowing on my screen, listening to Tyler celebrate. The office had mostly cleared out by now. Just the dedicated few still grinding away on projects that never seemed to end. I pulled up our company directory and started checking. Quietly, methodically, the way I approached every problem. Jennifer Wu, junior analyst, 2 years with the company. I sent her a carefully worded message. "Hey Jen, got your attention email? Curious what the range looks like this year." She responded within minutes. $38,000. Pretty generous, right? Marcus Daly, systems administrator, 3 years experience. $31,000, he told me when I casually asked him at the coffee machine 15 minutes later. Can't complain. I checked with 5 more people throughout the evening. Every single one of them, some with less than 2 years at Crestwood, had received bonuses ranging from $28,000 to $45,000. And I'd gotten $4,500. By 9 p.m., I was the last person left in the office. I sat in the dark, the glow from my monitors the only light in the entire floor. 8 years. I'd been the one who rebuilt our entire backup infrastructure after the ransomware attack in 2019. I'd personally saved Crestwood from losing $3 million in client data. I'd trained 14 people, all of whom now made more than I did or got better bonuses. And this was my reward. My phone buzzed. Text from my wife, Heather. "Your dad's asking about dinner on Sunday. You okay? You're usually home by now." Heather's father, Douglas Richmond, was the chief operating officer at Crestwood Financial. That's actually how Heather and I met, at a company holiday party 7 years ago. She was visiting her father. I was the young systems engineer who just fixed a critical server failure that morning. And Douglas had introduced us. "This is the young man who saved our Christmas," he'd said, clapping me on the shoulder. Quick thinking, Nathan. Quick thinking. We'd gotten married 2 years later. Small ceremony, mostly family. Douglas had given a toast about how proud he was to have me as a son-in-law, how I represented everything Crestwood valued: dedication, intelligence, loyalty. I believed him then. I drove home in silence, that number burning in my brain. $4,500. Less than my monthly rent. Less than the cost of the training I'd provided to junior staff over the past year. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made a decision. I needed to talk to Douglas directly. Father-in-law or not, he was COO. He could explain this. Heather was waiting at the kitchen table when I walked in. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. What happened? I told her everything. The email, Tyler's phone call, the numbers I'd gathered from other employees. She listened quietly, her expression growing more troubled with each detail. That doesn't make sense, she finally said. You're one of their most valuable people. Dad's always talking about how much the company relies on you. Then why did they give someone I trained bonus that's almost 10 times what I got? Heather reached for her phone. I'm calling my father right now. Heather, it's almost 10 p.m. I don't care. This is wrong, and he needs to fix it. Douglas answered on the third ring. I could hear him clearly through Heather's phone, that familiar authoritative voice that commanded boardrooms. Sweetheart, it's late. Everything okay? No, Dad. Everything's not okay. Nathan just found out about his retention bonus. $4,500, while people he trained got $40,000. What the hell is going on? There was a pause. Then Douglas said, Heather, these are complex compensation decisions. There are factors Nathan might not be aware of. Like what factors? I called out, loud enough for him to hear. Another pause. Nathan, I can't discuss specific personnel decisions over the phone. But I can tell you that the compensation committee reviewed everyone's performance, tenure, and market value. The bonuses were calculated fairly. Fairly? I felt my voice rising. Tyler Brennan got $42,000. I trained him. He still needs help with basic configurations. How is that fair? Douglas's tone shifted, becoming cooler, more corporate. Nathan, I understand you're upset. But you need to trust that the people making these decisions have access to information you don't. Tyler may have specific skills or potential that justify his compensation. Skills I taught him. This conversation isn't productive right now. Douglas said. Why don't we all cool down and discuss this rationally on Sunday at dinner? I want to discuss it now. I said. Well, I don't. Heather, tell Nathan to get some sleep. These things always seem worse at night than they do in the morning. Good night. He hung up. Heather stared at her phone, then at me. I've never heard him dismiss something like that before. I sat down heavily in the kitchen chair. Your father just told me to appreciate the gesture and sleep on it. He didn't say that.
He might as well have.
Trust the process. You don't have all the information. That's corporate speak for shut up and take what we give you. Heather reached across the table and took my hand. What are you going to do? I looked at my wife, at the concern in her eyes, and realized I had no idea. Fight? Quit? Just accept this slap in the face and keep showing up every day? 8 years of my life, and I was worth $4,500 to them. The weekend passed in a tense fog. I couldn't focus on anything. Saturday morning, I pulled up my employment contract and read through every clause. Nothing in there about retention bonuses. They were considered discretionary. The company could give them out however they wanted, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it legally. Sunday dinner at Douglas and Patricia Richmond's house was normally something I looked forward to. Patricia was a fantastic cook, and Douglas usually had interesting stories about the business world. But walking through their front door that evening felt like approaching a battlefield. Douglas greeted us in the foyer, all smiles and warmth. Nathan, Heather, come in. Your mother's just finishing up the roast. We settled in the living room with pre-dinner drinks. Douglas in his leather armchair, Heather and I on the couch, Patricia bustling in and out with appetizers. For 20 minutes, we made small talk about everything except the elephant in the room. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Douglas, can we talk about the retention bonuses? His expression shifted slightly, a businessman putting on his boardroom face. Of course. I've been expecting that question. Then you have an explanation for why people I trained got bonuses 10 times larger than mine. Douglas set down his scotch and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Nathan, you're a solid employee, reliable, technically competent. But you need to understand something about how businesses value their people. It's not just about tenure or technical skill, it's about strategic importance. Strategic importance.
Yes.
Tyler Brennan, for example, he's being groomed for a leadership track. We see management potential in him. The larger bonus is an investment in future leadership. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I've been asking about leadership opportunities for 3 years. Every time I'm told to focus on my technical work. And you're excellent at technical work. That's where your value lies. So, I'm too valuable in my current position to promote, but not valuable enough to properly compensate. Patricia walked in with a tray of stuffed mushrooms. She looked between us, sensing the tension, and quietly set the tray down before retreating to the kitchen. Douglas's voice took on a sharper edge. Nathan, I'm going to be frank with you. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment. The compensation committee made their decisions based on extensive analysis. Your bonus reflects your market value. My market value at Crestwood, I said. What about my market value elsewhere? The room went very quiet. Heather's hand found mine, squeezing tight. Douglas sat back in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly. Is that a threat? It's a question. If Crestwood thinks I'm worth $4,500, maybe other companies have a different valuation. Be very careful, Nathan. The job market isn't what you think it is, and walking away from a stable position over a bonus, that's short-sighted. More short-sighted than underpaying someone who keeps your entire infrastructure running? Douglas's hardened. You know what your problem is, Nathan? You don't understand your own limitations. You're a technician. A good one, yes, but a technician nonetheless. Men like Tyler, they have vision. They can see the big picture. That's why we invest in them. Heather stood up abruptly. Dad, that's enough. No, let him finish, I said, standing as well. I want to hear exactly what my father-in-law thinks of me. Douglas rose from his chair, his height and presence suddenly intimidating in a way I'd never noticed before. I think you're a man who's let his ego get in the way of common sense. I think you've spent 8 years doing acceptable work, and now you're upset that the company recognizes excellence differently than you do. And I think you need to decide whether you want to be part of Crestwood's future, or whether you want to throw away everything over a number that offended your pride. Everything? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Douglas, what exactly have I built here? A career where I'm worth less than the people I train? A future where I'll always be the technician who isn't quite good enough for the real opportunities? You have stability. You have benefits. You have a family connection to senior leadership. Some people would appreciate that. Appreciate the gesture, I said quietly. That's what you want, isn't it? For me to thank you for the $4,500 and go back to being the reliable technician who doesn't ask questions. I want you to be smart, Douglas said. And right now you're being anything but. Heather grabbed my arm. We're leaving. We walked out without another word. Patricia appeared in the hallway, looking stricken, but we were already out the door. In the car, Heather was shaking.
I've never seen him like that, she said.
He's never talked to anyone like that, not even at work. I started the engine, my hands steady despite the fury coursing through me. Your father just showed me exactly what Crestwood thinks of me, and exactly what I need to do next. Monday morning, I arrived at work an hour early. The office was empty except for security and the cleaning crew. I made coffee, settled at my desk, and started documenting everything. Every system I'd built, every process I'd optimized, every piece of critical infrastructure I maintained. Not because I wanted to help Crestwood, because I wanted to know exactly what they'd lose when I left. Tyler showed up at 8:30, bouncing into the office with the energy of someone whose biggest worry was choosing between latte flavors. Hey, Nathan. Got a minute? I'm having trouble with that new firewall configuration. I helped him. I always helped him. But while I was walking him through the process for the third time, I was also making notes about what he didn't understand, what he couldn't do without me. By Wednesday, I had a complete picture. Crestwood's entire technical infrastructure depended on knowledge that existed primarily in my head. Sure, there was documentation, but it was outdated, incomplete, and scattered across multiple systems. The backup procedures I developed weren't written down anywhere. The custom scripts that automated critical processes were stored on my personal drives. The relationships with vendors and consultants that kept everything running smoothly, those were my relationships, built over 8 years of late-night crisis calls and early morning meetings. I started updating my resume that night. By Thursday morning, I'd sent it to 12 different companies. By Thursday afternoon, I had 3 phone screens scheduled. By Friday evening, I had 2 in-person interviews lined up for the following week. The first interview was with Meridian Tech, a financial software company that had been trying to recruit me for 2 years. Their CTO, Richard Vance, greeted me in their sleek downtown office with a firm handshake and a knowing smile.
"Nathan Pierce," he said.
"I was wondering when you'd finally take me up on my offer to talk." "Timing is everything," I replied. We talked for 2 hours. Richard laid out their technical challenges, their growth plans, their company culture. Then he got to the compensation. "For someone with your experience and skills, we'd start you at a $145,000 base salary. That's a 40% increase over what I'm guessing you make at Crestwood, plus a signing bonus of $25,000 and annual performance bonuses that typically range from 20 to 30% of base salary." I did the math quickly. That signing bonus alone was 5 times what Crestwood had given me as a retention bonus. The annual compensation would be almost double what I currently made. "When would you need an answer?" I asked. "How about Monday? I don't want to lose you to another offer." The second interview was Friday afternoon at Cascade Systems. Their offer was similar. $140,000 base, $20,000 signing bonus, comprehensive benefits, and clear paths for advancement. Both companies wanted me not as a technician, but as a senior engineer with leadership potential. I drove home that Friday evening with 2 job offers in my pocket and a decision to make. Heather was waiting at the kitchen table when I arrived, her laptop open in front of her. "I've been doing research," she said without preamble. "Market rates for senior systems engineers with your experience. Nathan, Crestwood's been underpaying you by at least $30,000 a year for years." "I know. And my father knew it, too. He has to know it. He approves all the compensation packages." I sat down across from her and told her about the interviews, the offers, the numbers. Heather's eyes widened as I spoke. "That's incredible," she said. "That's what you're actually worth." "It's what other companies think I'm worth," I corrected. "Crestwood thinks I'm worth $4,500 and lectures about knowing my limitations. When are you going to tell them?" I looked at my wife, at the certainty in her eyes, and realized she'd already made peace with what was coming. "I'm not." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm not giving notice. I'm not having an exit interview. I'm not giving them 2 weeks to figure out how to replace me or try to convince me to stay. I'm going to accept one of these offers, wait for the right moment, and just walk out." Heather was quiet for a moment. "My father's going to be furious. Your father told me to know my limitations. I'm just taking his advice." I accepted Meridian Tech's offer on Saturday morning. Start date, 2 weeks from Monday. That gave me time to wrap up personal affairs, but not enough time to second-guess myself. I didn't tell anyone at Crestwood. Not Tyler, not my manager, not even the HR department. I just kept showing up, kept doing my job, kept being the reliable technician Douglas Richmond thought I was. The following Thursday, I stayed late at the office. Not unusually late. I often worked past 8 o'clock or 9 p.m., but late enough that most people had gone home. I started moving files from my work computer to encrypted drives. Not company data, nothing confidential, just my personal scripts, my documentation, my notes. Everything I'd created over 8 years that wasn't technically Crestwood property, but that the company had come to depend on. Around 10 p.m., I was finishing up when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Network Operations Center. I answered it immediately. "Nathan, thank God," said Kenny Walsh, the night shift supervisor. "We've got a major problem. Our primary data center is showing critical alerts. Multiple server failures, storage systems going offline. I think we're under attack." My heart rate spiked. "What kind of attack?" "Looks like ransomware, but sophisticated. It's moving through our systems fast. I've isolated what I can, but Nathan, I'm in over my head here. We need you." I looked at my watch. 10:17 p.m. In my inbox was an email from Meridian Tech confirming my start date for Monday morning. In my bag was every piece of personal property I'd brought to Crestwood over 8 years, already packed and ready to go. "I'll be right there," I heard myself say. The drive to the data center took 12 minutes. Kenny was waiting for me in the parking lot, his face pale under the security lights. "It's bad, Nathan, really bad." They're encrypting everything. Client databases, transaction records, backup systems. If we don't stop this in the next hour, we're looking at total data loss. We ran inside. The operations center was chaos. 4 junior technicians were staring at screens filled with error messages, none of them knowing what to do. I dropped my bag and moved to the primary console. The attack was elegant, professional. Someone had found a vulnerability in our perimeter defense and was systematically working through our systems, encrypting data and demanding ransom in Bitcoin. The timer on their ransom note showed 53 minutes remaining before they started permanently deleting files. My phone buzzed. Text from Douglas Richmond. Nathan, I'm told we have a situation.
Handle it.
I'm trusting you. I stared at that message. 8 years of handling situations. 8 years of being the person they called when everything went wrong. 8 years of trust. Right up until it came time to properly value that trust. I looked at Kenny, at the junior technicians, at the screens showing Crestwood's infrastructure collapsing in real time. Then I looked at my watch. 10:43 p.m. Nathan, Kenny said urgently. What do we do? I could save them. I knew exactly how this ransomware worked, knew the vulnerability it exploited, knew how to isolate it and restore from our secure backup system. I designed that entire backup architecture. Nobody else in this building knew how it functioned. Call Douglas, I said. Tell him you need executive authorization to engage our backup protocols. Kenny grabbed his phone, but I held up my hand.
Wait.
First, call Tyler Brennan. He's supposed to be my backup for critical incidents. He got a $42,000 retention bonus. Let him retain some value for the company. Kenny's eyes widened. Tyler? Nathan? He doesn't know these systems like you do. Then it's a good thing Crestwood invested so heavily in his potential. I stood up and picked up my bag. Kenny grabbed my arm. Nathan, what are you doing? We're running out of time. I'm going home, Kenny. It's 11 p.m. on a Thursday and I'm tired. But the attack is a problem for people who are properly valued by this company. Call Tyler. Call Douglas. Hell, call the entire executive team. I'm sure between all of them, they can figure out how to click the restore from backup button. Kenny's face went white. You know how to stop this? You're just going to walk away? I looked at him, at this young guy who made more than I did and got bonuses that reflected actual respect. Kenny, let me tell you something about corporate loyalty. It's a one-way street. Crestwood's been taking my expertise, my time, my dedication for 8 years. And when it came time to show what that was worth for $1,500, less than what they spend on coffee for the executive floor each month. Nathan, please. Call Tyler, I said again. Or better yet, call Douglas Richmond. Tell him his reliable technician has decided to know his limitations. I walked out of the operations center at 11:04 p.m. My phone started ringing before I reached my car. Kenny, then my direct manager, then Douglas himself. I let every call go to voicemail. The drive home took 15 minutes. Heather was still awake, sitting in the living room with her laptop. There's an emergency at work, she said as I walked in. My father just called me. He said there's a major system failure, and they can't reach you. I set my bag down carefully. They reached me. I just decided not to answer. Heather closed her laptop slowly. Nathan, what did you do? I told her everything. The attack, the ransom demand, Kenny's panic, Douglas's text, and my decision to walk away. They're going to lose everything, Heather said quietly. Client data, financial records. Maybe. Or maybe Tyler Brennan will surprise everyone with his strategic importance and future leadership potential. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. My phone rang again. Douglas Richmond. I let it ring through to voicemail. Then I blocked his number. Then I blocked every Crestwood number in my phone. My father's going to, Heather started. Your father told me to know my limitations. I interrupted gently. I'm just a technician, remember? Not leadership material. I don't see the big picture. So tonight, when Crestwood needed someone with vision and strategic importance, I let them figure it out on their own. We sat in silence for a while. Around midnight, my personal email dinged. It was from Kenny Walsh, sent to my private address. Tyler couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. We lost everything. They paid the ransom. $2. $3 million. Douglas is losing his mind. He's saying this is your fault for not responding to the emergency. I showed the email to Heather. She read it twice, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. $2. $3 million, she said. Because they didn't want to properly compensate the person who could have prevented it. Because they thought $4,500 was an appropriate value for 8 years of expertise. What happens now? Now, I start my new job on Monday. And Crestwood figures out what they actually lost when they decided I wasn't worth investing in. The weekend was strange. Saturday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. Most were from Crestwood people, coworkers, managers, even some of the executives I'd barely spoken to over the years. All of them wanted to know why I hadn't responded to the crisis, why I'd abandoned the company in its hour of need. But one message was different. It came from Patricia Richmond, Heather's mother. Nathan, I don't know what happened between you and Douglas, but he's been in his study since 4 a.m. He's never looked this shaken. Whatever this is about, can we please talk? Heather read the message over my shoulder. Do you want to respond?
No.
Patricia's a sweet woman, but this isn't about her. This is about Douglas and Crestwood treating me like I was disposable and then being shocked when I agreed with them. Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang. Heather answered it, and I heard Douglas's voice in the entryway, loud and angry. Where is he? I need to talk to Nathan right now. I walked into the entryway. Douglas looked like he'd aged 5 years in 3 days. His tie was loose, his shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Nathan, he said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking that I'm just a technician who doesn't understand his own limitations. I replied calmly. Remember? You told me that last Sunday. You let $2. $3 million get stolen because you were angry about a bonus? No, Douglas. You lost $2. $3 million because you spent 8 years undervaluing the person who could have prevented it. You invested $42,000 in Tyler Brennan's potential while giving me $4,500 for actual results. That was your choice. Douglas stepped closer, his face flushed. You had a responsibility. You were the senior engineer on call. You abandoned your post during a crisis. I wasn't on call Thursday night. That was Tyler's rotation. Check the schedule. You know damn well that in an emergency, you call the people you've invested in. The ones with strategic importance and future leadership potential. I'm just the technician, remember? Not worth proper compensation, not worth real opportunities, just worth enough to keep showing up and saving your ass every time something goes wrong. Heather put her hand on my arm. Dad, maybe you should go. Douglas ignored her, his eyes locked on mine. You're finished in this industry. When word gets out that you sabotaged your own company, I didn't sabotage anything. I simply made the same calculation Crestwood did. You decided I was worth $4,500. I decided that meant I didn't owe you my Thursday night. Fair's fair. This isn't over, Nathan. I will personally make sure Dad stop. Heather's voice was sharp. Just stop. You treated Nathan like he was replaceable. You told him to know his limitations. You want to know what his limitation was? It was believing that loyalty and expertise mattered to Crestwood. Now he knows they don't. Douglas looked at his daughter, like he didn't recognize her. You're taking his side? I'm taking the side of my husband, who spent 8 years being undervalued and underpaid, while you and your compensation committee handed out massive bonuses to everyone except the person who kept your entire infrastructure running. Douglas was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, Nathan, what would it take for you to come back? There is no number, I said, because this isn't about money anymore. It's about respect. And you can't buy that back after you've made it clear you never had it in the first place. Douglas left without another word. Heather closed the door and leaned against it, her eyes closed. My father just threatened to destroy your career, she said. Let him try. I've got a job offer from Meridian Tech that pays almost double what Crestwood paid me, with a signing bonus 5 times larger than that retention insult. And I've already started getting calls from recruiters who heard about what happened. Apparently, walking away from a company that undervalues you is exactly the kind of backbone that impresses people in this industry. Monday morning, I started at Meridian Tech. Richard Vance met me in the lobby with a genuine smile and a welcome packet that included my signing bonus check, benefits information, and a detailed career development plan. "Nathan Pierce," he said, shaking my hand. "Welcome to a company that actually values its people." The first week at Meridian was like breathing fresh air after years in a stuffy room. People listened when I talked. My ideas were taken seriously. My experience was treated as an asset rather than something to exploit without proper compensation. On Friday afternoon, Richard called me into his office. "Nathan, I wanted to give you a heads up. We got a call from Douglas Richmond at Crestwood Financial. He was trying to warn us about hiring you." My stomach tightened. "What did he say?" "He said you were unreliable in crisis situations, that you'd abandon your company during a critical incident. He strongly suggested we reconsider your employment." And Richard smiled. "And I told him that any company stupid enough to give a $42,000 retention bonus to a junior employee while giving $4,500 to their senior engineer deserved exactly what they got." Then I asked him how much Crestwood had lost in that ransomware attack. He hung up on me. "You knew about the attack?" "Nathan, everyone in the industry knows about it. Crestwood's been scrambling to explain to their clients how they lost encrypted backups to a ransomware attack. And the story going around is that they had someone on staff who could have prevented it, but they treated him so poorly that he walked away. That's going to hurt them. It already has. 3 of their major clients called us this week asking about migrating their systems to our platform. They don't trust Crestwood's infrastructure anymore." 2 weeks later, I got an email from Kenny Walsh. He'd left Crestwood and was working at a startup downtown. "Hey Nathan," the message read. "Thought you'd want to know. They fired Tyler Brennan today. Turns out when you're not there to fix his mistakes, his strategic importance and future leadership potential don't mean much. Also, Douglas Richmond announced his retirement effective immediately. Word is the board forced him out after the ransomware disaster. The whole place is falling apart. Hope the new job is treating you well." I showed the email to Heather that evening. She read it without comment, then handed my phone back. "Do you feel vindicated?" she asked. "I feel like I finally learned what I'm actually worth," I said, "and it's a lot more than $4,500. 3 months into my new job, I got a call from Patricia Richmond. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just the 2 of us. I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Patricia looked older, more fragile than I remembered. She ordered tea and sat across from me with her hands wrapped around the cup, like she needed the warmth. "How's Heather?" she asked. "She's good, working on a new marketing campaign for her firm. And you? Are you happy at your new company?" "I am. They value what I bring to the table. It makes all the difference." Patricia nodded slowly. "Douglas won't talk about what happened. Not to me, not to anyone. But I know he regrets how things ended." "Does he?" "He lost his job, Nathan. That company was his entire life, and now it's gone. The board blamed him for the ransomware attack, for the lost clients, for everything. He's been at home for 3 months, barely leaving his study." I felt a twinge of something, not quite sympathy but not satisfaction either. "I'm sorry he's going through that. Are you?" Patricia asked quietly. "Because I think part of you is glad he's finally experiencing what it feels like to be undervalued." She wasn't wrong. "Patricia, your husband told me I was just a technician. He told me to know my limitations, and when I did, when I recognized that my limitations included not working for people who didn't respect me, he lost everything. That's not my fault." "I know." She set down her teacup. "I just wanted you to know that Douglas understands now what he lost, what you were worth. He won't admit it, but he knows." "That's good," I said. "Maybe the next person he manages will benefit from that knowledge." 6 months after leaving Crestwood, I was promoted to Senior Technical Director at Meridian Tech. The promotion came with a 30% raise, equity in the company, and a team of 8 engineers reporting to me. My annual compensation was now more than triple what I'd made at Crestwood. Richard Vance called me into his office the day the promotion was announced. "Nathan, I want you to know something. When we hired you, we knew you were undervalued at Crestwood. But what we didn't know was just how much. Every project you've touched has exceeded expectations. Every team you've worked with has improved. You're exactly the kind of leadership we need as we grow."
"Leadership," I said.
"That's funny. My last company told me I didn't have leadership potential." "Then your last company was run by idiots." That evening, Heather and I went out to dinner to celebrate. Over wine and expensive steaks, she raised her glass in a toast. "To knowing your worth," she said, "and to having the courage to demand it." We clinked glasses. As we ate, Heather said, "My mother called me today. She said Dad's been applying for consultant positions. No one will hire him. The Crestwood disaster follows him everywhere." "Do you feel bad for him?" Heather thought about it for a moment. "I feel bad for my mother. She didn't do anything wrong, and she's watching her husband face the consequences of his own arrogance. But Dad?
No.
He taught you to know your limitations. You just taught him to know his own." The irony wasn't lost on me. Douglas Richmond had spent his entire career preaching about strategic thinking, about understanding value, and making smart investments. But when it came to the people who actually kept his company running, he'd been blind to everything except the politics and personalities that dominated the executive floor. A year after leaving Crestwood, I was at an industry conference in Denver when I ran into Tyler Brennan. He looked different, thinner, more uncertain. The cocky confidence gone from his posture. "Nathan," he said, approaching me cautiously during a networking break. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" We found a quiet corner in the convention center. Tyler kept his eyes on his coffee cup like he couldn't quite meet my gaze. "I heard you're doing really well at Meridian Tech," he said. "Senior director, big team, major projects. Congratulations." "Thanks. How are you doing?" "I'm freelancing, contract work mostly. It's been tough." He finally looked up at me. "Nathan, I need to ask you something. That night of the ransomware attack, did you know I wouldn't be able to handle it? I knew exactly what you were capable of. I trained you, remember?" Tyler's jaw tightened. "So you set me up to fail?" "No, Tyler. Crestwood set you up to fail the moment they decided your potential was worth more than my experience. They gave you a $42,000 retention bonus and told me I was worth $4,500. Then, when it mattered, they expected me to save them anyway. I just decided that night to be worth exactly what they'd valued me at. But I lost my job because of what happened that night. My reputation got destroyed." "Your reputation got destroyed because you couldn't deliver on the investment Crestwood made in you. That's not my responsibility, Tyler. That's yours." Tyler was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "I get it now. What you must have felt when you saw that bonus distribution. I've been on the other side of it since then. Companies interviewing me, finding out I was part of the Crestwood disaster, and deciding I'm not worth the risk. It's like being invisible, like your experience doesn't matter." Welcome to how I felt for 8 years. Except I actually had the experience and skills to back up my value. You had a big retention bonus and a pat on the head from Douglas Richmond. "You could have helped me that night," Tyler said, and there was real pain in his voice. "You could have walked me through it, even if you didn't come in. You had the knowledge." "I did. But Tyler, let me ask you something. If Crestwood had given me the $42,000 and given you the $4,500, would you have walked away? Would you have felt like you deserved better?" Tyler didn't answer, but the look on his face told me everything. He would have walked. He'd have felt undervalued, disrespected, exactly the way I had. The only difference was that I'd had the skills to back up my position, and he hadn't. "I hope things work out for you," I said, meaning it. Tyler wasn't a bad person, just someone who'd been caught up in a system that valued the wrong things. "But you need to understand, what happened to you wasn't my revenge on Crestwood. It was just the natural consequence of their decisions catching up with them." 18 months after leaving Crestwood, Richard Vance called me into his office with news that would change everything again. "Nathan, I wanted you to hear this from me first. We're acquiring a company. Well, not a whole company, just their client portfolio and some of their infrastructure. They're filing for bankruptcy and liquidating assets." "Which company?" I asked, though I already knew. "Crestwood Financial. They've been hemorrhaging clients since that ransomware attack. The board tried to turn things around, but the damage was too deep. We're buying their client base for about 30 cents on the dollar. I sat down slowly. Crestwood Financial, the company that had valued me at $4,500, was being carved up and sold for parts. And I was working for the company buying the best pieces. We'll need someone to lead the integration, Richard continued. Someone who knows Crestwood systems inside and out, who can migrate their clients to our platform smoothly. The board unanimously wants you to head this project. Me? Nathan, you built half of Crestwood's infrastructure. You know where all the bodies are buried, so to speak. Plus, there's a certain poetic justice to having you be the one who helps us absorb what's left of them. The integration project took 6 months. I worked with former Crestwood employees, people who remembered me, who'd watched me leave, who'd seen the company collapse afterward. Some were resentful, blaming me for not preventing the disaster. Others were quietly grateful, treating me with the respect they'd never shown when we'd been coworkers. Kenny Walsh was one of them. He'd left Crestwood before the bankruptcy, but came back as a contractor to help with a knowledge transfer. Over lunch one day, he brought up that night. "You know what I think about sometimes?"
Kenny said.
"That phone call I made to you, if I'd handled it differently, if I'd said the right thing, would you have come in?"
No.
Kenny looked surprised by the directness of my answer. "Really? Nothing I could have said?" "Kenny, I didn't leave Crestwood that night because I was angry about the bonus. I was angry, but that wasn't why I walked away. I walked away because Douglas Richmond had made it crystal clear that I was just a technician who needed to know my limitations. So I did. I recognized that my limitation was continuing to bail out a company that fundamentally didn't value me. But $2, $3 million, Nathan. That's what they lost. That's what their decisions cost them. Every dollar of it. They chose to invest in Tyler Brennan's potential over my proven results. They chose to give me a bonus that said, 'You're barely worth retaining.' They chose to structure their compensation in a way that communicated exactly how replaceable they thought I was. I just took them at their word." Kenny shook his head slowly. "The crazy thing is, after you left, we found all these systems that nobody else knew how to maintain. Scripts that only ran because you'd set them up a certain way. Vendor relationships that fell apart because you were the only one who really knew those people. It was like you'd been holding the whole technical operation together with duct tape and willpower, and we never even noticed until you were gone. That's the problem with being too good at your job," I said. "People stop seeing the effort. They just expect the results." The final piece of the Crestwood integration came on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Richard called me into the executive conference room where the board was meeting. Sitting at the end of the table was Douglas Richmond. He looked old. Not just older, but old. His hair had gone completely white, and there were deep lines around his eyes and mouth. He wore an expensive suit, but it hung on him like he'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. "Nathan," Richard said, "Douglas is here as part of the final asset transfer. There are some technical systems that require his authorization to transfer ownership. I thought it might be helpful if you two could discuss the technical details directly." It was a setup, obviously. Richard was giving us a chance to talk, maybe to find some closure. The board members excused themselves, leaving just the three of us in the conference room. Douglas looked at me for a long time before speaking. When he did, his voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "You were right," he said simply, "about everything." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like gloating, and I'd stopped needing that kind of satisfaction months ago. "I spent 40 years in business," Douglas continued. "Built Crestwood from a regional firm into a national player, and I lost it all because I couldn't see the value in the people who actually made it work. I was so focused on identifying future leaders, on investing in potential, that I forgot to value the present, to value you." "Douglas," Richard started, but the older man held up his hand. "Let me finish. Nathan, that retention bonus was the worst business decision I ever made. Not because of the dollar amount, though that was insulting enough, but because it told you exactly what I thought of you. And you were smart enough to listen." "What happened that night wasn't about revenge," I said. "I need you to understand that." "I do understand. You simply decided you didn't know us more than we'd valued you at. In retrospect, that's the most reasonable response you could have had. Douglas pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. This is a letter I wrote 6 months ago. I never sent it because I didn't think you'd read it. But it's an apology. A real one. Not for the company. Not to try to get anything from you. Just to say that I was wrong. And I'm sorry. I picked up the envelope, but didn't open it. What are you going to do now? Consulting eventually. After this bankruptcy clears, maybe I'll learn to value the people who actually do the work instead of just the ones who talk a good game in board meetings. He stood up slowly. Richard, the authorization codes you need are in the documents I sent over. Nathan can verify them. He probably wrote half the systems they unlock anyway. Douglas walked to the door, then paused and turned back. Your wife told me once that you taught her what real integrity looks like. At the time, I thought she was being naive. Now I know she was just paying attention to something I was too arrogant to see. After he left, Richard and I sat in silence for a moment. That looked like it was hard for him, Richard finally said. It should have been. He lost everything because he couldn't see value when it was sitting right in front of him. And you? How do you feel? I thought about it for a long moment. I feel like I finally got paid what I was worth. Not just in salary, but in respect, in opportunity, in being seen as something more than just a technician who needs to know his limitations. 2 years after leaving Crestwood, I was leading a team of 35 engineers, driving technical strategy for Meridian Tech's fastest-growing division, and earning more money than I'd ever imagined possible when I was sitting at that desk reading an email about a $4,500 retention bonus. But the real victory wasn't the money or the title, or even the satisfaction of watching Crestwood collapse under the weight of its own short-sighted decisions. The real victory was understanding my own worth and having the courage to demand that others recognize it, too. Heather and I were having dinner one evening when she brought up something she'd been thinking about. You know what's interesting? She said. My father spent his entire career teaching people about business value, about strategic thinking, about making smart investments, but he never applied any of it to the people who actually made his company run. It's easy to see value in potential, I said. It's harder to see it in the steady, reliable people who just show up and do the work. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd stayed? If you'd just accepted the $4,500 and kept going? Every day for the first 6 months. Then I stopped thinking about it because I realized the answer didn't matter.
I didn't stay.
I left. And that decision changed everything. The letter from Douglas sat in my home office, still unopened. I never did read it. Not because I was angry anymore, but because I didn't need his apology or his acknowledgement. I'd already proven my worth to the people who mattered, including myself. That $4,500 retention bonus was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because of what it was, but because of what it revealed. It showed me exactly how much Crestwood valued me, and it gave me the clarity I needed to walk away from a company that would never appreciate what I brought to the table. Sometimes, the greatest betrayal is also the greatest gift. It just takes time to understand which one you're receiving. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt undervalued at work,